Welcome back to Raised by Giants live discussion. Welcome everyone in the chat. Good to see you guys out there. And any moderators or channel members, we have an amazing, never before done show today, which is always great when you get to see or hear something for the first time. A dynamic duo of David DuByne from Adapt 2030 channel and Campbell from the Autodidactic channel. We're going to be covering a lot of things here today: lost history, Star Force, ancient power sources, Nikola Tesla, and I've really been looking forward to it. But before we get this show started, super chats and super stickers are available and will be read out live during the show. If you have any questions that you would like addressed, that's the best way to get them answered. Send in those super chats. PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee links are also in the description and are a great way to help support the show and my work. And also Ryder Ranger channel memberships are available and is really the best way to help support the show monthly for less than a cup of coffee. And if you become a Ryder Ranger channel member, you get access to bonus episodes. Become a Ryder Ranger channel member today and help support the show monthly, and check the community tab page of the channel to get access to those episodes. So with that down, we have returning guest, the creator of Adapt 2030 channel on YouTube. A warm welcome back to the show, David DuByne. How's it going, my friend?
Yeah, great. We're going to have this type of discussion with another who's an expert in the field, because it's all about traveling out to these places and discovering new areas, new areas of study, new actual relics, or new, I guess, ancient stone foundations, megaliths that aren't on or haven't been cataloged. And this is why I'm so glad that we're here today to talk about a couple of new things that were found in Istria.
Absolutely. And the last time you were on, we said nothing would happen with the 2024 solar eclipse. And look, nothing happened, David. We're still here. We made it through. And we were probably the only ones in the community that were saying that nothing was going to happen. So how do you feel about that, Dave?
Well, I will say that was just one single event, but the general trend of things, you can see that we're in a reset, and that's what we wanted to talk about today, the historical timeline of these resets. But with a single event along a timeline, that, fear that they were trying to push in on a single dot along a general trend is something very different. Now, the general trend, we all really need to get prepared for. This change is real. It's happened before, and we're just at it again. We've already entered the beginning phase of it. We're no longer waiting for it to happen. We are actually in the substantial change period right now. That includes economy, food production, civilization, and that rolls right back into all of our conversations today, Campbell, as well, about what is our ancient past or more recent past that's been reset, that's not allowed for us to know this history. It just keeps coming and going, coming and going. It's a cycle. It's a reset. It restabilizes. It's prosperity again. We hit the peak period and then we decline. And then, it's just over and over and over again, and how much knowledge is hidden during every single one of these resets. But for sure, the trend is clear. We are definitely changing our civilization as we move forward.
Really quickly before I bring Otto on, something did happen recently, and it seems as though you were right that people will start to see strange things in the sky. We had the northern lights in the south, in the freaking south, Dave, which is super interesting. And I think that counts as seeing something strange in the sky that people don't normally see so far south, that you've been talking about for many years, that things are going to start happening and people will start to see strange things in the sky. And I don't think that the northern lights were what you were referring to as like plasma lights and other phenomenon, but I just wanted to, let you know that you were technically right.
On that, yeah, with the magnetic field shift, you're going to see more of these auroras in further south locations. That's just a given with the magnetic field shift. But the things I was referring to were ground to sky lightning, blue halos, and let's say red sprites that will hold state for a much, much longer period of time, where people can actually see them or photograph them with regular cameras versus high-speed film. The size of the hailstones, as we see across the planet, was and is increasing in size. Also just storms that pop out of nowhere that break our infrastructure. These are the types of things I was referring to. And these comets that we're seeing are sort of meteorites or meteors, just gigantic fireballs. And we're going to witness more and more and more of these, especially as the Earth spins around, comes through that magnetic field coupling of the gas giants, and then swings around in April of next year. And we're the only thing in front of the sun. Every other planetary body is behind us in sort of a spearheaded fashion, where if you just want to work with gravity alone, forget the electromagnetism. If something pulls like a magnet, everything's going to get pulled into the face of our Earth. So this is the beginning of it. We're hitting into a little bit more of that debris trail, and it shall increase as we move forward over these next, 9-10 months. And we're starting to see it. I mean, you can't tell me that all these giant fireballs just in the last week across the world, all green, by the way, simultaneously, and nobody's putting that together. So these are the kind of signs that in the skies and things that you're going to look for.
Yeah, I think that they claimed that it was the solar storm that pushed the northern lights further south. Now we'll just have to wait and see if you were right about 2030, and only time will tell that one. But also, we have with us today returning guest Campbell from the Autodidactic Channel. Campbell, how's it going, my friend? Thanks for being here.
Hello. Good. I'm doing well. Yeah, thanks for having me back.
No problem. Really looking forward to the conversation. And I'm pretty sure you just missed David at the Palmanova Star Fort. You got there a few weeks after David was there.
It was just a few weeks, was it? Yeah, we dropped in there and we survived the apocalypse here as well. So that was good. Well, didn't end for us. Did you hear there was a Simpsons prediction that it was 40 days? There was something from the Simpsons. And so 40 days after the eclipse was the apocalypse, apparently. And we just happened to be standing up on the top of the sun pyramid on that day. So that was nice. But we didn't ascend, unfortunately.
Man, I was looking forward to that fifth dimension. Thought we would get there. What do we know about these star forts? And this is just an open discussion. You guys can ask each other questions. We'll just kind of free form it here. What do we know about these star forts? What were they used for? And well, I guess let's start with what they're officially used for. From my understanding, they were used by the military. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes. Yeah. They're all pretty much all forts today, or star forts, of course, by the name, right? Star Fort. They're all at least built for military, if not still, a lot of them are still military bases. But I don't believe they've got anything at all to do with the military or war or anything like that. I think that they've been reused, reclaimed, discovered.
Campbell, you were in Venice. Did you go to Mestre and check out the star fort that was just over the bridge there?
I didn't get a chance. It's been such a whirlwind trip. But I did have a look on the Google Earth at it and saw, it's a nice big star. That's the thing with stars, they're everywhere. The story is, they call them bastion forts. Basically, it says that a band of merry star fort builders went out in the 1500s and built them for a couple of hundred years. And that's the story. But then we get the same structures pretty much in the Americas. And they're all suddenly built by Americans for the Civil War, but they're clearly the same base idea. They're all different to each other, but they're the same base, sort of idea and structure.
Yeah, I'll say one thing about that. Uniquely, they always have water usually around them. And every one that I've visited has either been stripped or rebuilt. And the portions that are open to the public, if they are, definitely don't have any remnants of ancientness, if that's a term, inside them. All of it's been scoured clean. And I don't know if it's just our modern world that's doing that and the awareness is out there. It's like UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Once it's a UNESCO stamp on it, it's been sanitized. So we start to see the star forts with the same thing, that you go there. I went to a fair few around Šibenik, also in Croatia, and they were all rebuilt from the ground up. And there was 3 of them in one. In Šibenik on the hilltops, there's 3 of them. And I thought, oh, right, it's going to be 3. They were all brand new. They're all rebuilt in the last 30, 40 years. Yeah,
that's something that I found as well, traveling around. Even in Dubrovnik, the castle there, we started calling these places like history theme parks, because they've just all been redone. But we went to Belgrade Star Fort, and that was a weird one. It had been like you could see remnants in the ground of something much older, but you could see all the walls had been rebuilt, but really badly. It was like stone here and then a few bricks in, and then it was almost like they'd made it to look like, I don't know, like it was built badly. It was the weirdest thing. But and then there'd be like a brand new tower standing on a wall somewhere, and it was just this jumbled up mess. It was crazy. So yeah, I agree that most of these places have basically been rebuilt and turned into tourist attractions by the looks of it.
One thing I could say is it seems though, just from there's always one little sliver in some corner somewhere where they left the original part of it. So those like you and myself who are seeking this out find like a nugget, a remnant that it seems to be left over. Because when we were in Hungary, we went up to the Slovenian border and there were 7 star forts in this one town. Again, they were all rebuilt, and there was one little nugget of a wall that you could see might have been, or I thought was the original part, but everything else was scoured. So if your eyes are out there with a microscope, you're going to find maybe one original bit that they left on purpose, but the rest of it, for those of you out there that think I'm going to hit every star fort, I'm going to find the answers. Well, history's already beat you to it. They don't want you to find the answers. At least powers that be.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Unfortunately, with the ones that I've seen recently, it's a shame. But yeah, I mean, like you said, there are remnants. Like in Belgrade, you could see the original old footings and little bits and pieces popping up. Oh gosh, sorry, my phone.
Was that the ice cream truck or your phone?
That was my alarm. But yeah, they've definitely been sanitized. What the question I guess is why, right? They don't want us to know what they were. So, I mean, that's a pretty good indication that they're not what they tell us they are, which is, military forts. I mean, an interesting, observation is that a lot of them are called batteries. That's an interesting thing to call a big stone construction, isn't it?
Yeah, when I was in Palmanova, I took a ruler with me, and I was really there going to do research. So I was measuring the bricks and the different types of bricks. There was yellow bricks and red bricks. And the layering of it with the 30-foot tall walls around the 4 miles around it, you would need billions of bricks to do this. And it was a double layer of brick also. So they gave you this history of in the 1590s, this was a completely flat plain. And then they said, wow, what a great part, and it was supposed to be part of the Venice or the Venetian army. They set up building a 4-mile perimeter city, 30 feet tall with substrate on the bottom of it, filled it all in to, be a flat surface up there at 30 feet above the ground using 1.2 billion bricks, but you can't even find a broken wagon wheel anywhere from that time. And I was asking some questions like, where'd all your bricks come from? I'm like, oh, they came down there, somewhere south coast. They're brought up from near Rome or whatever. I'm like, where are all the broken stuff or the wagons and everything? And the most interesting thing was they said that approximately 1620, 1625, it took him 30 years to build this star fort that he and I had gone to, that Campbell and I did. Different times, different journeys. We didn't travel together, but that whole thing, 30 years of construction, and nobody wanted to live there after that. The story goes that they had to pay people in Venice to come up and live in the city. And I'm like, wait a minute. You got 30 years of wholesalers, 30 years of restaurateurs, 30 years of hoteliers, 30 years of laundry, 30 years of XYZ at that time, horses or feedlots or whatever it would be. And suddenly everybody just left, and then they had to pay people to go live there again. It made no sense to me. So just that alone on the Palmanova Star Fort, just the history of it, the amount of bricks, 1.2 billion bricks based on just the rough calculations on a napkin. Where does that leave us? That just makes no sense with that logistics available at that time.
Yeah, I totally agree. All star forts, like the one I started with was Jefferson in the coast, in the water off the Florida Keys. And that they say that's the biggest red brick building in the Americas. I even saw one article say the Northern Hemisphere, and that's only they say that's 16 million bricks. But that's just like the Citadel, the inside actual red brick building. And that's the question. All these bricks. The thing that gets me about the bricks, apart from the massive number, is they've all been laid in a bed of mortar. Like, how's that even possible? What are your thoughts on that, David? Because I don't even think it could be done by human hands, just for the sheer amount and the timeframes we're given.
Yeah, just the amount of bricks. I mean, let's use an even 500 million, which is less than half of what was used to do the walls at Palmanova, just on the outer defensive walls. How long would that take to do that? If a human, how many humans would it take? And then you start to get into the math, like how many humans would it take an average bricklayer, like an average person you would pay at a construction site today, how many bricks could they lay in a single day? And then you're talking about how many thousand cubic yards of mortar would have to be mixed. And then how does that play into everything? Where it was, the bricks were not all uniform. I'll say one thing, because I was into this measuring bricks thing while I was there. So I had my ruler. They probably thought I was a madman. Out there's a guy with the ruler measuring all the bricks all over the place. But none of them were, they were pretty uniform. Now, it could have been because of time and some erosion, but generally they weren't exactly the same. The yellows were variable. The reds were more uniform, but that thickness of the mortar definitely was not uniform in any way, shape, or form. The thickness of it, sometimes it would be, a good inch and a half thick. Other times it was only, quarter inch thick. It was like they tried to stack them to make them in the even line by the variance of the bricks by using more mortar along those faces of whatever the aero defensive positions would have been that are sticking off the city. But I was trying to do the same thing you're getting at, is how long would it take to build? So 30 years, how many people do you need just to put the bricks down? And then we have wet season also. Like, how could those wagon wheels transit through all that mud at the time? I mean, there's a lot of variables here that don't work in the historical fact. And when you ask about it, and then all the tunnels, I don't know if you went to any of the tunnels that were open there. That thing was a honeycomb of tunnels. So not only are we talking about just building straight brick faces, now you're talking about, 50 or 100 miles of tunnels that were built all along inside here, from the inner ring to the outer ring into the third ring out, tunnels connecting, and then tunnels in between that can run around and then how much brick does that take to put a tunnel system in there of hundreds of miles of tunnels? Most of them are blocked off. Obviously, they don't want you to get lost under there, but I'm fascinated by this place now that I've gone. It's really beyond human. It's beyond human engineering at the time that it was done. That's really what I can say definitively.
I mean, and just the logistics of having that many workers, you can only have so many people laying bricks, right? It's not like you can put 20 people in and it goes faster. And the tunnels, there's tunnels under all the star forts as far as I can see. Like, we went through them at Novi Sad.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the same thing. It was just tunnels and tunnels and tunnels, and silly stories about, fighters down there and these holes that they were shooting the enemy through that, you couldn't even see a square meter of, out the hole. It was crazy. But I mean, it's interesting because, and the water, right? Because that's also, I'm at Bosnia, obviously, and that's what they're excavating at the moment, is tunnels under the pyramid. And there's water down there as well. There's water under all pyramids. So I think all these things are, either linked up or they're similar devices from different civilizations. But I think that the answer is more that they've got a lot more to do with power than defense for military operations.
Yeah. Did you happen to go to Zagreb and go to Nikola Tesla Laboratory down in downtown Zagreb?
Do you know that I missed it? Again, I've been here. Been here like 5 weeks, and I've been everywhere, but not long enough anyway. So I'll be back to check everything out. But no, I had some friends went, and they said it was amazing. You had a massive coil in there, and
working models of magnetic motors, as we understand, using the Earth's magnetic field to power disks that are rotating oppositionally to each other, with copper plating in there to generate a charge. Right now, there wasn't just one, there were at least a dozen in there. I'm going to say 16, plus the Faraday cages, plus all the different motors. Some of them were vertical, some of them were horizontal. And that was in work. That was right in everybody's plain sight to see. And even me now, there's a coordinated effort to suppress any of that technology from coming out to working standard that can be then mass manufactured and put out into homes. That's all I can really say about that. But the technology absolutely 1000% exists. Now, couple that with the star forts and these different resonances off coastlines, and then, you know, what if it was one star fort for 100 square mile area of resonance within a field? Then you start to see the dispersion of them and sort of the geometric shapes along coastlines and where they're placed. And who knows, maybe the magnetic field was a little different than on the Earth, where some sort of ley lines were more electrified and it could carry current down that and then take it off into different directions as well. Just conjecturing.
Yeah, I think it's a full system. Michelle Gibson, I was traveling with her for the last couple of weeks, and she talks a lot about the Earth grid, and she includes like train tracks, which I found really interesting, because there's train tracks everywhere that literally connect all of these ancient sites. You know, a lot of star forts included. And when you think about the old types of trains, like a big metal, you know, train on metal tracks, you know, were they carrying some kind of charge? Were they some like artificial ley lines almost, right? Carrying charge back to batteries? I'm not sure, but it looks like everything, you know, the canals, the water's definitely in there. And of course, water, you know, travels by current, just like electricity. And I think there was definitely a worldwide grid, and all these things were connected in some way. And that's sort of what the last fall was, I think, is all that free energy, and that tech got cut. You know, the grid got cut, and now it's not working, and that's why we're paying for our power, right? The interesting word, power.
And I was wondering if the grid was disturbed enough where it didn't work any longer, and instead of repairing it and allowing us to enjoy that same, you know, freedom of quality of life, where if you wouldn't have to pay for almost anything, then you could be free to explore what your passions are. Whole different world at that point. But they chose to take it down this path of never-ending global war and destruction to destroy all that, so it's outside of, or if there's a little remnant left, it can be explained away. I think there was definitely a division point where at one point we could have repaired that and gone back to that old way, that old world, but whatever energy, as you talk, power took a hold of our world at that point, or was allowed in at that point. You know, because you look at Saturn, I'm wondering if some of the same things didn't go on hundreds of years ago, where somehow something was brought here that was power, that was allowed to inhabit this area of our of the world, of the solar system here, that was not prior here, that grabbed power and took us down this very destructive road to then destroy all of that infrastructure and technology and bring us back onto a completely metered system for life, including, you know, like you said in the beginning, supermarkets.
Supermarkets, yes. Yeah, I'd agree with that, right? They stole the power and put themselves in power. Right.
Well, Rome basically ruled the world until around the medieval era, or what's known as the Dark Ages, from around 476 AD, which the Middle Ages lasted around 1,000 years and ended around 1450. Right, and that's not that long ago. Okay, if you did the math, what would that be, like 574 years ago? We were in the Dark Ages, which, what would that be, like 8 people ago? You know, 8 people ago, we were in the Dark Ages, right? Where everyone was running around drunk, you know, raping and pillaging people. They were literally drunk 24/7, you know, ale and wine on deck all the time, 24/7, you know, and I really believe during that period was a lot of knowledge and a lot of understanding, and possibly even technology was lost during that period of 1,000 years, if you are to believe the official account of history. That 1,000 years there is a really crucial and important 1,000 years where things basically just went to shit.
Also, they say. I don't believe the official story of that. I mean, there's a lot of talk about the 1,000 missing years. Have you sort of Anatoly Fomenko's work and looking at the timelines, and we've had all these calendar changes on top of that. I tend to think that's been written in. It's part of their story to you know, to send us down in our minds, basically, to tell us we're just these, you know, crazy beasts who get drunk all the time and rape and murder, and so we need all these wars and armies and forts. And I tend to believe that was just either the 1,000 years, the Dark Ages, didn't actually exist, or it was something completely different to what they've told us. So I think that this change, that the switch over to the world we've got now, I'm thinking started around mid to late 1700s is when something happened. And so to me, everything before that is really up for grabs. It's like history, right? His story, because we know the winners write the history. So, that's the question, is how much can we believe any of these stories? And that's sort of what I do. We go and look at history, and it all starts falling apart, like pretty quickly too.
Well, when you look at like the powerful families of, back in the day, I mean, how much history wasn't even written down? I mean, the only people that could actually write were some of the royal family people, so what about the common everyday folk? Like, we don't really get anything from their perspective. It's all written from the powerful family perspective. And what were they leaving out? What were they not putting in? What did they not say? What did they not record? Because they basically had the ability to write whatever they wanted to write.
Yeah, for sure. And then you have all the book burnings that went on as well. So they've destroyed a lot of books and knowledge that they don't want us to get our hands on. And then, we can mention the Vatican and what's under there, apparently. What do you think, Dave?
I think just as human ingenuity, that Dark Ages doesn't make sense. So you have 1,000 years of no development anywhere on the whole planet, which goes against completely everything of human nature in itself. Now, you can't tell me with a straight face that people are going to live in squalor, dirt, filth, disease-ridden hellhole for 1,000 years when they could develop their way out of it unanimously across the entire planet. Nothing got developed for all of that time. That is impossible. And compressed air energy technologies, if anybody would like to look this up, were developed during the Roman era. So they understood if you put air and water and you compress the air, that the water, or vice versa, whichever medium you have, would push and spin something. Then suddenly we get compressed air energy technologies, again, appear in about 1750 is really when they pop back out of the woodwork again. So you have that same exact technology during the Roman era, and I'll give it to you and say, bring it up to like 500 AD. Well, they understood, the compression of air with water could power some device, and then suddenly it disappears, and then, 1,500 years later or whatever, it pops back up. Like, what happened during that time? Even just the evolution of compressed air energy technology went back. If they had the original technology, you should, over 1,000 years, at least be able to replicate the same tech. You're using water and air in a crucible or in some sort of vessel or container. How difficult can that be not to be able to replicate that? So in human ingenuity, that just the base state of humanity is to try to get itself a little bit better and a little more comfortable. That's the problem with the world now. It's so comfortable that everybody became so complacent because they don't want to lose the comfort. Because the base is to find that place where there's no animals hunting you. There's no warring tribes that are going to come in and kill you. There's bountiful food. There's clean water. That's the base we all look for, as when we find it, I'm staying here. Comfort's good. We're going to stay alive. But again, the way we have it today, that's gotten too comfortable. So nobody will take action because they don't want to rock the boat and get their comfort taken away. It'll be snatched from them, unruly in the middle of the night one way. But I do want to say one thing about the timeline that you might have for that. That I can attest to this. We were in Verona in Italy, which is west of not only Palmanova, but also Venice. If you go to Verona, Verona. And I started to look at a lot of ancient map sites. Now, there's a place called Lago de Garda, which means Lake Garda. And if you look, there was a star fort right at the very south edge of that. And in the 1650s maps, it shows that it's definitely an island within a river. It looks like it's a couple miles off the lake. But then if you look at the 1755 maps, that is in the lake. It's not even, it's a remnant of some sort of foundations that are at the side of the lake. So some transition happened there. So I'm starting to look at a lot of finding single points on the map like that one is a good start. And just finding as many maps from that same exact area for as many dates as I can and just overlaying them to look at the changes. But that's one of my best examples, that Lago de Garda, with that star fort originally in the river center as an island in the river that went around it, that suddenly some earth change happened, and that thing is inside. And, you know, the old port of Rome as well, the same exact thing happened. That ended up 1.2 miles inland. So what's going on with these events here where suddenly ports are not used any longer and there's massive shifts in geologic feature that rivers run in different directions and then ports are no longer usable. And then they just tell you something simple like, oh, it's silted up. They didn't use it any longer. I kept getting that excuse too. I'd always ask, why didn't they use that port anymore? Oh, well, river changed course. It's silted up. Well, I'm like, dude, how many rivers can change course in a very short period of time where your entire port system is rendered useless? Like, what event happened during that very short couple decades? Non-functional ports, and then you got to rebuild new ports because everything shifted in its river course.
Yeah, I think we have cyclical resets or catastrophes, whatever you want to call them, as well. I mean, you can see it in all the old maps. We've got islands that appear and disappear. You know, continents change shape. All, you know, environments change. It's, you know, we've all heard the woolly mammoth, right? You know, that was ice frozen with tropical food in its mouth in Siberia. So clearly we have events that change things pretty quickly, but they're not rivers silting up. It's much bigger forces that I think we're talking about.
Well, you know how you get 1,000 years of no progression is you kill all the smart people. You kill all the people that have the ability to create any of this stuff, right? If you kill the builders of something, then no one knows how to build anything. It would take them a really long time to be able to figure out how to build a house. If you have a few people, just to give an example, like you have a city, one person, a few people know how to build buildings. If you kill those people, nobody knows how to build buildings. And it's going to take them a really long time in order to figure out how to build buildings again. I don't know. That's just where my logical and critical brain goes. So I really don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility that that could have happened. And now maybe not the way that it's been put out in the way that they describe it, but it definitely is possible. If you kill the smart people, you kill the people that have the ability to actually do something, then you effectively get rid of the technology. You get rid of whatever it is that needed to be built.
I mean, I think in some circumstances, you know, with intricate technology, you could make that argument, you know, if you took everyone out. But I believe everyone's born a genius, and it's the education system that takes that away from them. Humans are so ingenious, you know, especially when they're in a situation where they need to be. And if you have houses you can look at and see, then it wouldn't take long for people to work out how to build them. Maybe with, you know, advanced electronics. But to me, that's just part of this story that they tell us because they want us to think that we're stupid. We're stupid humans. We're destroying the planet. We're the ones that are starting wars and killing each other. We're the bad guys, right? When to me, it's the system that has put us here, that's introducing all the poisons into our, you know, food system, water system, that create the education system, and, you know, money, tax, you can go there, politics, and that's repressing the humans. But you get a human away from that, and I mean, look at children, look at babies. You know, you don't get a dumb baby. You know, I think that's just a story they want us to believe about ourselves, because if we believe that, then we're we're less likely to fight back against their rules, right?
Sludge is good for you. Your baby raising glyphosate-ridden cornflakes for the first 10 years of their life.
Bugs.
Yeah,
bugs.
I will say one thing. We have a forest on our property here, and it doesn't take long till you understand how suspension of trees falling over in a storm can form a structure, and you could probably replicate that. trees are falling down in our forest all the time. We got pine property here that was part of an old, on the very edge of our property was an old logging company's land. And those trees are continuously falling down, and they fall down in formations where they become structurally sound. I mean, just something that simple should reboot civilization itself, of coming with that base of, all right, we can make something in a concave structure. Wow, I wonder if we put those things straight and did some T's across them, if we could make something as well. So it's taught out of us, or we're supposed to be so specialized and laser niched on our specialties that nobody's a generalist. I'm not sure exactly how that would have been done when you're taking the innate observational powers from a human being away of the platonic solids or nature itself with cylinders and cross beams, and then evaporate that out of any possibility of being able to put that together and create something from it. There's a lot of things I just can't get in terms of timelines. Again, it all rolls back to that again. That massive wipeout of life would have had to have been so massive that you would really come down to just millions of people left on the planet to take 1,000 years to restart it again.
Well, I mean, that applies if someone sees a house, yeah, they might be able to duplicate a house, but that doesn't apply to a pyramid. We can't duplicate a pyramid.
Yeah,
so
I'd agree with
just
that.
because you can see it and look at it doesn't mean that you can rebuild it. And several civilizations throughout history have tried, and it's garbage. They can't do it.
Yeah.
They're lopsided. They're really crappily. You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah. But that wasn't the Dark Ages. But yeah, I agree. Anything technical like that, it's a different story. But as far as that causing the Dark Ages for 1,000 years, because I mean, you can look at the orphan trains, right, and all these empty cities we had back in the 1850s, 60s, and then all this massive introduction of orphans, and how widespread that was, who knows? But we're only not even 200 years past that point, and look where we are. Like humans are pretty quick at creating when they're allowed to, and even when they're not allowed to, even when they're subdued, they still do. I mean, look at all the free energy machines that have come out, and their inventors normally disappear, right? But this stuff's still there. I mean, you could talk about Tesla. I believe all humans are geniuses, and we're just taught to believe that we're not, and not taught to use our minds properly. And it's a lot of people like to say everyone's stupid, but they never think it's them, But everyone's, as smart as you are. We all can think, we all can create, we all have dreams and all this stuff. And I don't think bad conditions or anything take that away. I think that would magnify it, because you'd want to be creating stuff to change your circumstances for, the family and the people you love. So
if you had the
I'm
discipline,
giving you a hard time here, but I just don't believe in the Dark Ages.
But if you had discipline to do that, though, you that would have to come along with discipline and trial and error, and actually wanting to do it. I mean, if you have people, lazy people like there are today that don't want to do anything, then you got a problem.
You can only be lazy when you've got a supermarket that you can get food from, and you've got a television, and you've got people to look after you. Like, if you're fending for yourself, if you're lazy, you don't live very long.
Yeah, well, then you also have the cataclysm thing of this, and like resets, so who's to say that this wasn't a cataclysmic event that started this? And a lot of people were wiped out, and this reset started, and the technology was lost. Would you not think that would be a possibility?
Yeah. No, I think, a reset. There's a lot of books that seem to show, people going out and rediscovering these sort of battered places. But I don't think, in my mind, these resets and catastrophes that happen aren't worldwide. It's not like one thing takes out the whole world. It seems that happens every now and again, but it seems that we have smaller, more precise ones a lot of the time, just looking at all the different ruins around. But I mean, that could definitely reset, but 1,000 years, that's a long time for people to just sit around and do nothing.
Right, because you got to think about the Chinese had established trade routes through the Silk Road, through Central Asia, over into, let's say Turkey. But then we had the Roman Empire, which established trade routes all through North Africa and all through Europe, obviously. Even if there was a cataclysm, those very ends of the road, for the better term, would have still had trade routes and still been somewhat intact. So they would have had the stories about, if we just go far enough that way, we're going to find other people that are going to trade with us. So even that simplest of, we can't set off on a horse or a camel or bring an oxen train with us to go find those people out there that used to be there to try to trade with them again through the old stories. There's been resets in China too, like these grand solar minimums that pop up and these emperors. Another fact for anybody to check out. There's never been an emperor or a period of time longer than 400 years that emperor and the house of the emperor has been in power. For some reason, they always collapse and are usurped by new power bases every 400 years or so. So look at those dynasties over there. They never last longer than 400 years. And you need to ask yourself, why? Is it a micro reset like you're talking about? Was it a global reset? That could be, once every 5 of those cycles, once every mini cycle, maybe 2 continents have something, or 1 continent has something happen to it. But then as you come around over these, 2,000-year periods, or some boom that happens globally, and then it sets us back. Because I was wondering about electromagnetism as well, where, if we come into a different electromagnetic field, the way we process information in our brains is going to change, because those lobes of your brain are electromagnetically connected. Electricity fires your brain off. Well, if there's an interruption in that magnetic field, perhaps you're not able to operate and you lose your functionality and dexterity, or who knows what would happen. But maybe children are just affected of this different magnetic field state. There's just a lot of things to put into in terms of natural cataclysms and cycles. And then is it just brute force from a comet strike or some sort of meteor impact, or is it electromagnetic field? We're going to a zero state of electromagnetic field and our planet can tip on itself. Is it a change in that electromagnetic field state that affects, not only animal migrations, but then human behavior, perception, et cetera, that upsets that balance, or maybe people can't feed themselves for a week or 2 and then they die because they can't even drink water. They don't know how. They forget to drink water. I don't know. There's a lot of things that are happening, but the remnants are left. And I'll say one last thing. When we were in Verona, I was talking to a coffee shop owner there, restaurant coffee shop owner, who also believed the same thing. He's like, Romans up here, we're talking about stumbling into cultural layers below them. The ancient Romans, we're talking about cultural layers below them here in Verona. And they find always these different layers of time that are buried in between, like 1.5 to maybe 3 feet. And they'll find it, they build on top. There was too much energy to dig it out. And then they find another layer. So it's like a layer cake going down. And for some reason, which I didn't understand, is they stopped at certain layers. They just wouldn't go any deeper. And I was asking, well, there's other layer. Why don't you go any deeper? And they're like, well, the funding for this stopped. And you dig yourself. There's something else under there, even deeper than that. But for some reason, I don't know what. And Israel's the same. They go down to the layers right around, Christian era time, 2,000 years prior, and they just stop all the digs right there. And we find this is a routine thing that I keep finding again and again. The cultural layers, as soon as they come to a certain prior time in the past, they never want to go deeper. Explain that one to me. When something else is down there deeper.
They're hiding. They don't want us to know. 2,000 years is an interesting time frame. If you think about the precession of the equinox, like the last age was 2,600-ish. years, that could be where all the good stuff is, right? The stuff that's like not from this epoch kind of stuff. Who knows?
I mean, what kind of things are you finding? Because I saw one of your videos where you'd walk around, was it Multivoon, where you found a whole series of foundations out there that were, megalithic. I mean, they were very, very, very large stones, but they looked like they were in semicircles and stacked in terrace layers. And it should have been a major tourist site if it was. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah. One of them, they were in Croatia, I think. So Slovenia, gosh. But yeah, we found one hill that looked to be man-made. It was just big, what looked like high quartz content, rocks everywhere, or, definite walls and terraces and machined blocks, or, at least shaped blocks. And then further away, we found three on the top of these three hills. One was a standing circle, standing stones, and the other one looked like almost like a mini star fort. It was a big sort of, I don't know, megalithic construction. It had big terraces going down the hill and stuff, heaps and heaps and heaps of stone in there, and that stuff's all around. Well, it was just in the bush. We just walked through some guy's farm field and into the bush and up a hill, and there it was. And because they're not publicized, not many people know they're there. We just sort of happen to know people who sort of told us, point us in the right direction. But there's stuff everywhere, like around where I'm in Bosnia, there's pyramids everywhere. And again, old sort of megalithic sites. There's the megalithic balls that I went and saw. One of them's 40 tons. There's just this stuff, it's everywhere. And, I think we're just starting to really uncover it. We were sort of told as we were growing up, it's just the pyramids in Egypt. And then, there's a few in South America, and we've got Stonehenge, and we've got this. But it's looking like this stuff is everywhere. And that's why I'm starting to think that it's the remnants of an old grid or grids. Who knows if they're from different times. But it looks like they all have different functions. A lot of the hills and mounds that they've uncovered here, like layered, like geopolymer clay, like they're a battery, right? So, and the pyramid's got water under it, and all they're like detecting argon in there and negative ions and all these, electromagnetic fields. So it looks like it's all part of a system. And I mean, probably more than one. Is probably, the pyramids are probably the oldest system, and then, they rebuilt it after a cataclysm with star forts maybe, and then maybe after that it was all the big red brick buildings and canals and stuff. But it's, the way I look at it is that's the natural grid, right? Built on the energy ley lines, the natural energy points of the earth. And so I call that the macro grid. And then these, whoever they are that have come in and taken the power, that they want us in a micro grid, right? And they want us in our phone, like the circuit board grid. And that's the L, right? The electric, the people that we elect into power.
Elohim.
Elohim, right? Interesting. So, yeah. Oh, that's my little point. That's where I was going.
Well, let me ask about the quartz then. You brought that up. What do you think about the, how does that fit into an electrical grid using Paleozoic effects with quartz then?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you put quartz under pressure, it releases piezoelectric energy. You can also store energy. You can store information in quartz. As far as I know, you can use them as to direct the energy as well, like to point it. So I think it's a big part. And we use crystals, right, which is basically quartz. We use them in watches and computers and chipboards and all that kind of stuff these days. So I think they were, definitely part of the energy system of the grid that was out there. More part of the, I guess, what we would think of as the electronic sort of components, directing energy flow, maybe, like stabilizing the frequencies and things like that. Maybe is, storing information as well, because you can store information in them. And everything we see, right, it's all sandstone or lime, it's all full of quartz.
And with that water delivery, you mentioned weight under pressure. So 8 pounds per gallon. Imagine actual areas where they could redivert the water that would flow in and flood, say, a large lake size, and put a couple million pounds of pressure on top of that, create the electric discharge, and then, let that electrified water go off and, irrigate the farm fields. Then it comes through in a pulse, just like we have, alternating current or whatever. Could it not be pulsed like that, but on a much more larger level? Its scale, its scale would be just astronomical compared to anything coming down an electric line here. Although they're not really delivering you electricity, they're just making the electrons pulse. You're really, I want to pay my electric bill by the electron because I'm reusing the same electron back and forth again on my wire, right? So they're not giving me electricity. Yeah, I saw you laugh when I said that. You understand that, right?
Yeah. Had a bit of a look into that one. Yeah, it's all a scam, man. It's we've had, as far as civilizations on Earth, we've had this free electricity. We've had machines that structure water, which I think might have been part of what the Star Forts were doing as well, structuring water. Basically that was a grid and technology that was for us, to enhance us, to enhance our bodies, our minds, our spirits. And now what we've got is the complete opposite. And, we're seeing the effects of that. They tell us that people didn't live long and were short in the past. But when you just got to read about the Greek philosophers, and most of those lived into their 80s and 90s. Like this whole perception of we're at the best point in the epitome of man, humankind now. It's just not true. Like we've fallen, man. We're way below where we used to be.
Yeah, and a lot of the statues that we're seeing in Italy specifically, not so much in other places, but the stone statues, were life size of the individuals. And they were, I'm 6'4", and I was looking up at these things. They're like 6'8", and built like a pro wrestler, every one of them. And they were supposedly life size of the individuals that were represented in the carvings. And I'm thinking, you got an entire society of 6'8", 6'10", incredibly powerful people running around. And then you look at in the paintings and you see in the size of that, even what is considered the regular guards of the day, quote unquote. But then the kings themselves were much larger. So if you're going to take, and they, well, that's artistic creativity. They wanted to make the king this, I think they were painting to the realism was what we see in terms of stature and girth and size of the individuals at the time. So, history tells you one thing, that, yeah, they were pygmies and, we finally grew up and we're 6 foot now from all of whatever. But it seems like every single one of these resets, the persons get a little smaller.
Yep. Yes. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
But the architecture is really big. You have these giant doorways. You have these giant steps. It's so interesting how they want to make it seem like that people were a lot shorter, but everything was built for really big people.
Yeah. Some of the doors, like they actually have door handles on them that even you couldn't reach, David. Like they got these handles like 10 foot off the ground. It's crazy. So what, how old are those buildings and what were those doors for? But, we've got swords, we've got armor, we've got skeletons, we've got so much evidence of
so giant,
of giants basically. So it's not just a fairy tale, kids.
Maybe the fairy tales are the truth that you referenced that wasn't ever written down. That you say, how did the peasants pass information? Well, through fairy tales, children's stories, etc. But perhaps that's the truth that could not be written down or wasn't written down.
That makes sense. And when it comes to these grids and these like PowerPoints, Campbell, you referenced earlier that it seems like these megalithic sites and these star forts and a lot of this were like power, like energy sources, which seem very plausible, especially when you look at the Mayan complex in Mexico, laid out like a grid and the motherboard of a computer and a cell phone. And it seems like back in the day, it was more like structures on Earth that were creating this grid. And now now everyone is the grid.
Yeah, right? Pretty much, yeah.
Now people are the grid. Now we're carrying around the grid with us in our pocket.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's what I believe. Like it's the macro grid to the micro grid, right? The nature versus the electronics. And that's what they're trying to push us into. I mean, look at all the VR stuff and virtual worlds and the talk about that and, the whole, can I say 15-minute cities and all this kind of stuff. They want us locked down, not moving and just playing our part in their grid and to be totally controlled by electronics, to have all these, facial recognition and stuff. That's all this created electronic grid. And it's interesting, right? Because they say the jinn that the jinn were created from smokeless fire. You know, what's electricity, right? Smokeless fire.
Yeah, and carrying a mobile phone out into a nature area, what kind of electromagnetic resonance would that leave in a pure state of nature as you walked through with your, phone on, maybe not connected, maybe connected to a cell network, but what kind of resonance does that leave in a pure environment? Because then they can contaminate the environment with electromagnetic pollution. Because you just said it there, the old buildings were built of, like you said, quartz and different types of substrate that could carry current and in a grid. But now you look at today's world, it's concrete. Like we've turned a substrate that has no real electrical capacity to be the base of all of the buildings, at least in the highways and these sort of things. Think about megalithic stones that were actually the stanchions for some of our 8-lane superhighways versus poured concrete and rebar that's shorting out the system. Like just the very building materials themselves, either able to carry current, and that would be electromagnetic and knowledge, both. It's a frequency, or not.
What is the most conductive element that we know about? Do either one of you know, like what's the most conductive element? Is it copper? Is copper the most conductive, or silver?
I don't know for sure. Copper would be
gold.
Up there, and
it's gold.
It is gold.
Silver's number 2. Gold's number 1.
It is gold. Yeah. Okay.
Gold is the most conductive element.
Yeah, they use it in all cell phones.
Wrapping your head around and touching an element. Yeah, gold is the most conductive.
It is. Yeah. Well, there you go. And I mean, gold, right? Gold's everywhere over these old world buildings. All the gold domes and other bits and pieces. It's all gold, which is interesting because it's all looks like it's gold plated, right? And you need electricity to do that. But they tell us that they didn't have electricity back when some of these buildings were built. But it's, yeah.
Well,
Campbell, can I ask you a question? When you went, I know you're looking around some cathedrals and more ancient building thing. Have you seen any of the copper lines in up the walls or on the floors? And if any of these, have you noticed that too?
Yeah. Definitely. Right up to the antennas on the roof and down the walls. And I've saw it at some star forts as well, in different buildings and old towns. I mean, it looks like they were collecting, energy, right? And especially the cathedrals. Obviously, they got resonance, right? They got their organs, they got their choirs, they got their bells. So it was the whole thing was about frequency and resonance. And I kind of think that's why they were taken over, by the religions, is because that's where you felt close to the Creator, because of the resonance, right? And they just changed it to feel close to our God kind of thing. But I mean, I think there were healing centers as well, but definitely part of some kind of grid where they were collecting and distributing, or at least using some kind of energy source. I've also seen a few instances where it shows that these cathedrals are built over big water tanks, basically big water vats, right? Which is just wherever there's water under a building, I'm pretty sure it's like an electrical creating device. But yeah, I've definitely seen the strapping. It's a lot.
I'll say one thing about the bells. Also in the city of Verona, in the castle there, they had some World War II photos, and our American soldiers had thousands of bells in a courtyard. They'd stripped out of everywhere there was a bell. I was like, there's that many bells that they could even strip out of. Apparently every single building had bells. Homes had bells, churches had bells, everywhere had bells in these different configurations, some of them longer, but they put out a different frequency. And they stripped everything in the 40s of bells. There was none left. Yeah. And they were like, well, they needed to melt it down for this and that. And the excuse was written in a couple paragraphs, but stripping the frequency out of human range, I think, was more the point.
Yeah. I don't think we've got any original bells. I think they've put some back in some cathedrals now, but they're not the original ones. And they even say that they can't make the alloy that the original bells were made out of anymore. They just lost the technology somewhere along the line, apparently. But yeah, bells are very interesting. They're definitely frequency. And if you look into like the myths and things about bells, a lot of them say that they were to keep trolls away. So it's were they used to enhance positive energies and keep negative energies away? I think that's what's happened is we had protection as part of this system, but when it was taken apart by whatever happened, probably some kind of cataclysm, then that allowed a nefarious force to move in, shall we say.
Those bells were to keep away the dogmen, bro.
The dogman.
Werewolves, bro. Hey, dude, I believe in Dogman. I think he's real.
Yeah. Oh, there's lots of depictions of dogmen, and there's even stories. There's one of the King of France was trading with them and paid them money to I don't know, I think he actually hired them as an army, but they're actually referenced in proper books, these dog-headed men. So who knows? At this point, I think we've got to question everything, and everything's got to be at least a possibility. I don't think we should say that's right and this is wrong, because then you're kind of stuck. But if everything's interesting, then I think that the past is much different than what they want us to believe it was.
Well, it seems like a lot of these star forts do seem to be built like a fortress, right? Keeping something out or protecting something, and then that begs the question, why were they essentially destroyed? If they were used by the military a long time ago, why would they be destroyed, or why wouldn't they be, repurposed? And it seems like seems like star forts would be a pretty good advantage, right? Pretty good advantage to have. And like back in the day, whenever you laid siege to a town or a city or whatever, then and you won, you now own that town or city or that castle or whatever it was that you were doing. I don't know. It's it definitely is really interesting when you look at the structure of these buildings. What was going on? How was it all made? Like David was talking about earlier, what was it being used for, and how does it all come together? And that's the mystery, and people love the mystery, and people want to keep the mystery going. That's why it'll probably never be solved, is because people want the mystery and they want to keep talking about it. And if people knew what it was about and what it was for, then ruins the mystery, right?
Oh, there's always more mystery.
Yeah, Cam, go ahead.
I was just saying there's always more mysteries. You go, David.
Yeah, you disassemble it. Another thing in the production of those star forts, on the outer faces of them, all those stones, however large they were cut at 45-degree face angles or some sort of 37.5. So when you go up, it's never just a straight wall up. It's always an angled face up. So think about the complexity of, machining or hand-working stone to get that degree face on every single one of those outer facing. So when I was telling you about Palmanova, those billion bricks will leave it an even billion. That was a sub layer. Then they had a full layer on the outer bricks, which was what you consider like the hardened concrete, cut at 37.5 or 45 degrees, depending on where you were on the outer wall of the fort. And then right where they came together in the corners, both corners had to be hewn. And we saw some stuff out in Split like that. Palmanova as well. So it's not just you build a bunch of bricks and you have a star fort, then you need to face it in the outer coating to withstand cannonball fire, supposedly. But then again, a lot of this stuff was stripped. So I'm wondering the actual energy required to take away ancient Roman concrete as that mortar between these bricks. Like how much extra power and energy would it take to disassemble what was built at that time? Because one of the reasons I'll tell you, we did go to the one in Mestre that was outside Venice. And all the walls in the inside of the canal, they were all stripped. It was just bare dirt that was held in there by a bunch of vegetation. Once you went on the backside of it, there were some remnants of walls and things, but mainly it was the mud walled, like just mud humps now that were there. So, this Roman concrete is supposed to be some of the strongest on the planet, but they built all these supposed star forts and remnants with this concrete, and then to disassemble it would take almost as much, or if not more, energy to take it apart. And if that's your spoil, is a bunch of rocks at a fort you now have to disassemble using your labor, that's really makes no sense to me either. And the stories of how they repurposed all this, I get it. If everything was just rocks without Roman concrete on it, to take that apart and build another part of the city. But if you understand how incredibly tough that concrete was, that was just the normal concrete masonry between the bricks and the outer facing stones, you're looking at like super glue times 5,000. And then how much strength would it take to chisel through that and get those faces clean again, and then be able to reuse them as a repurposed building material somewhere else? Again, that just doesn't make sense on its own, knowing and seeing the production of building quality at some of these older sites.
And star forts aren't that practical, really.
No, they're not.
They're
always invaded. I'm sorry, again. Well, they're always invaded, and I never found even one in history that didn't withstand an invasion. So obviously, it didn't work that well, you know.
Yeah. So, yeah. What were you saying, that people were invading star forts and things? I mean, yeah, I think, I don't know how good they are defensively. We're told this story about the cannons and the angles and all this kind of stuff, but they've all got tunnels all underneath them. You know, they sort of tell us the water was moats and that, but I'm still convinced that I don't even think they were built for human habitation at all when they were constructed. I think they're much, obviously, I don't think they're from the 1700s. I think they're probably at least thousands of years old, but they were part of a electrical grid system that was creating, you know, or turning ether energy into usable energy, structuring water, things like that. And you know, after cataclysms and when civilizations fall, they were found and repurposed and reused, and then we just get this silly story about their forts. You know, there's nothing really fort-like about most of them, apart from the fact they've got a wall around them. But then they have multiple walls, and they have all the, you know, why, like just the shape of a star fort. I mean, just to build it in that shape, you're looking at, you know, what, 4-5 times the materials than if you just build a square. You know, so that's the, you know, they don't make sense to me as forts at all, is what I'm trying to say here.
What if ancient Atlantis was a giant star fort?
Do you mean the civilization, or are we talking about a
Well, if you're
landmass?
talking about like an actual landmass, like you know, people describe it as being, which I really don't know. But if it was a landmass, I mean, you have rings within rings, right? These star forts have rings within rings, you know, outer layers, inner layers.
Yeah. Could be. Who knows? I mean, that's kind of, that is the basic design that we see on star forts. And I think that we don't see, you know, we're only seeing the top of them as well. I'm sure that most of them have got a lot more under the earth that we're not aware of. But yeah, could be, right? Ring of dirt, ring of water, ring of dirt, ring of water.
That Eye of Africa.
Putting it out there.
Well, I know David Stig Hansen. This guy, he's an explorer, follows some ancient history, been out to the Eye of Africa 3 different times. And he cannot find any, you know, of this man-made types of walls and sort of things that would be more of a reference. It seems like a pure geologic formation with very little human input into it, if any. If it was wiped away by a massive flood that looks like, you know, it's spilled over that side of the continent there. Otherwise, the Mali canals, very similar to the Kalahari canals, which are over in Central Africa there. But otherwise, yeah, that Eye of Africa doesn't seem to fit the bill of a star fort. Natural formation, yeah, but star fort, no. So where would it be? Under Antarctica somewhere, or has it been broken apart in the last 300 or 400 years of construction? Was it downtown London, but the walls were taken away? Who knows? The further we go back in time, the more deconstruction can take place. And I always look at the UNESCO heritage sites, because I know they've been sanitized, but they're giving you a pinpointed map of where at least the highest level of this technology was that they had to remove first off the planet under the guise of protection. So if you start to look at these and just map them out, UNESCO already did it for you. These are the prime locations on the planet that had the highest remnant tech left over, I believe.
Yeah, man, that's a good tip. Go and connect some lines. What were you going to say there?
I was just going to say, well, I mean, we don't even really know if Atlantis actually existed. I mean, it's definitely not the what you were referring to, which I call the Eye of Sauron from Lord of the Rings. Is what it kind of looks like. But
yeah.
I mean, we don't really know. I was just saying speculation in theory, because the way that you guys are describing these star forts seems like a lot of the descriptions of what has been described as this land of Atlantis. I don't know.
Well, could I throw an idea out here? So what we're talking about is more of, for a better term, the modern ancient past within the last, say, 10 to 20,000 years of time. But if we go to the last interglacial, which is approximately 108, 110,000 years prior, they had 10,000 years of warmth, the same brain capacity, physiologically exactly the same as us. So like, what kind of remnants or what kind of civilization did they build during that time? And if we go back 2 ice ages ago with that same 10,000 years of warmth, same physiological brain capacity, everything exactly the same, you would not be able to recognize a person from that time to today. So what happened to these other interglacial times when we had the same conditions? We can't find a single thing from what I would consider more ancient civilization, ancient tech going back into the interglacials of the previous ice ages. So Campbell, I didn't know if you had anything on that side of things too, because everything we're talking about is, comparatively modern, quote unquote.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, again, the Bosnian pyramid, they found a leaf between some of the geopolymer capping plates on the pyramid, and they got a date of about 32,000 years off that. Of course, there's been the whole conjecture about the Egyptian pyramids and the 12,000 year age. Is that right? So yeah, I agree. I think we're talking about multiple civilizations that have been destroyed, and definitely the land's changed, right? Water's risen in places, it's gone down in places. So a lot of and we know some of it's underwater, right? We've got Yonaguni, we've got under ocean cities in the Bay of Bengal, and all around the place there's sunken stuff. So yeah, I think that a lot of it's been destroyed, a lot of it's been hidden underwater, under land. Like the Bosnian pyramid, it's completely covered in dirt. Like, it doesn't look like a pyramid, right? It's completely covered in dirt. But if you look at when they were discovering all the pyramids in South America, same thing. They were all hills, and they all had to be excavated and uncovered, and then they found that they were pyramids. So, how much is still out there that's just been covered that we don't even know about? I mean, I'm sure that there's stuff everywhere, and it's just because of the, cyclical resets and cataclysms and things that we can't put the picture together, because we don't have the whole picture, right? Half of it's been destroyed or covered up.
Yeah, what kind of frequency are you getting when you're inside the Bosnian pyramids there? It's well talked about that, like you yourself, like when you go inside there, what kind of change are you feeling when you walk in from the outside? Just like in your physical body, your mind, something.
Yeah, it's a very like relaxed, calm, good feeling. You just feel good. The first time I went in, I went with some friends, and we went in at it was about 10:30 in the morning. Went into the tunnels, and we went because they got meditation chambers. So we went and started meditating. And after about an hour or so, my friends got up and they were going to go to a different tunnel. And apparently they were trying to tell me that they were going, and they ended up sort of yelling at me, and I just didn't respond. I was just sitting there, and then they went somewhere else, and then I sort of came back from meditating and wandered out. Thought I'd been in there an hour and a half, maybe something like that. And we got outside and it was 6 o'clock. I'd been in there for 7 hours, and so had they. And it literally seemed like we'd been in there for an hour, hour and a half kind of thing. Happened to me again the other day. I thought I was in there for like half an hour, and it was like 2 hours. So there's something going on with that as well. But you just feel good. You just feel good, relaxed. A lot of people, like we all went in, we all had like coughs.
That's strange that he's cutting out talking about the Bosnian pyramid, Ryder. That's really strange.
Basically, that's all gone.
All jumbled up.
Yeah, you know, specific topics, suddenly the communicate. We had clear communication through the entire talk here, and then suddenly, right when he really describing Bosnian pyramids and the energies inside, suddenly just cuts off.
Sorry, did I drop that?
That's insane. Yeah,
exactly right.
Certain topics.
It happens a bit. But yeah, there's definitely something there. They're all man-made geopolymer caves that were filled in. They were all filled in purposefully. There's other types of geopolymer in there that's like more like a ceramic, and they've done radar to look inside some of them, and one of them's actually got crystals set inside this big kind of rock. There's water running through there, so there's a lot going on, and they've taken all the readings of the orgone, the magnetic fields and negative ions, and it's all there. It's all very high readings, and there's even a beam coming out the top, 28 hertz, with a 4-meter diameter shooting out the top of the pyramid. So it's the first pyramid that they've actually got scientific research done on, and readings, for things like energy and magnetics and all this kind of stuff. And there's definitely a lot going on in there, and you definitely feel it.
Did you get to the apex of the hill there to walk around on the top? Was there any difference feeling between the top and then interior of the pyramid?
Not discernibly. There's like an old structure they've put up there, which is clearly not an original one. It's a bit of a hike up there, but it feels good. But I didn't feel like, because everyone wants to sit down on the top and be in the beam, right, and do something. But there was no sort of feeling like that. That they theorize that it's probably more a communication beam, just because of the frequency, the 28 hertz that's used a lot in like communications. So, but just being on the pyramid and being near it, and not even necessarily in the tunnels, you feel like everyone's very happy there. They're very relaxed. There's dogs around. They're all very chill as well. It's just this really cool, nice feeling. That's the only way to describe it, really. Got to come and check it out.
Have you had those same kind of physiological feelings in any other places that you've been, or some of the megalithic areas, sites you visited, cathedrals? Yep. Or have you picked up that same when you're talking about mellowness in other places or relaxedness in other places?
Yeah, for sure. Not as strong, but definitely the megaliths we found out in, I think it was Slovenia. Definitely, we were sort of sitting out there and meditating on them as well. So there's a definite, to me, they're all energetic sites, and we went and saw the stone balls, and I could feel their magnetic field, probably like 3 or 4 inches off the stone. Like, it was really strong. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And, what they say is Dr. Sam Osmanovic, who's discovered the Bosnian pyramid, he did tests on these stone balls, because when the story is they all came out of a hill. There was a big storm, and it washed this hill away, and all these massive stone balls rolled out of it. And some of the locals thought they were full of treasure, so they smashed some of them. So they were able to get bits to do readings on. And apparently there's 5 elements in the cement, the geopolymer, that's not on the periodic table. So, and they've got a very high iron content. So even these stone balls, that they're just stone balls, but even they seem like they're part of this, macro electric system or whatever we want to call it, grid.
Yeah, and how are they harnessing and delivering that power? That's the whole thing. People always talk about wireless delivery of technology. It'll give everybody cancer. Wouldn't work. You can only do it 6 feet from here. They try to play it off like it's not doable. The Tesla's experiments at Wardenclyffe Tower didn't work. And, but then you got Marconi doing things, sending radio broadcasts out. You got Dr. Brown in the 1960s doing electrogravitics off of tethered wires and things. There's something there about the delivery. Now, once it's delivered out, how do you pull it back in? See, these are the missing bits of the tech that we don't have, or have been destroyed or completely erased from possibility. You're insulating wires now. Maybe the wires weren't supposed to be insulated to pull out of the aether. I'm also looking at everything as an inverse of the way it should be. So, not obviously non-insulated wires in your house running through the wall, but non-insulated wires to capture that ether to come down. But every single wire we have around the planet right now is insulated wire. So you got to think about if they're encapsulating that magnetic field inside, and that's why they need the insulation in that wire to keep that. So what happens if you uninsulate those and try to pull out of the ether itself? Because I'm doing electroculture this year, so I got a ton of copper wire, and I've been wrapping it around different frames of you should see how crazy our tomato plants are doing. We were marveling. We put them in 3 weeks ago, and they're already like this tall, because I used the 4x4 woven wire fence on T-posts at the end of it, and then I just wrapped the thing in a couple different strands around the whole metal frame there, and boom, they just came up like crazy. Non-insulated wire. What if it was insulated? It wouldn't work the same way. So, you're trying to think about our modern inverted world. Everything's insulated wires. Well, what if you could capture that in a non-insulated form, and that would be the base of something at that point?
Are you putting a current into those into that copper wire, Dave?
No, I'm just letting it come right directly. Those millivolts come right out of the ether into those wires themselves, and do it. I didn't ground them into. I just wrapped them around, because we got 2 sets of fences, and they're in a square or a long rectangle. So I just wrapped them, along the fence line on both sides of it, and away we go. I've never seen the tomatoes grow that fast in my life. I'm really shocked. Really shocked.
Wow, that's cool. It's an interesting point. They tell us that they're insulated, obviously, so they get electrocuted. So was everything a much lower voltage, right? Because we tend to use high voltage things. If it was much lower, then it wouldn't be potentially dangerous. And like you said, we're just missing the receiving bit, right? How to access it, or what sort of machines or whatever it could run. But I think it was, when we think of technology, we can only see it from our point of view, right? And we see that as a lot of electronics and all this kind of stuff, but their technology may have been completely different, and the way they live life was no doubt different. So they would have had different needs, and so who knows? It may have just been to grow crops and to structure water, and no doubt with all that stuff flying around, people might probably didn't get sick as much, got healthier. Anyway,
so think about,
that's definitely me.
No, Campbell cut out again, didn't he?
No.
Monsters hitting us again, Dan.
And so think about that just for one side thought. You talked about seeing the copper cabling or the copper inlay inside the cathedrals going up off the floor into the walls, non-insulated, and they didn't get shocked either. Now, did they?
Now he's completely gone, Dave.
Yeah, it's weird. The different 2 subjects that he touched on, and it froze up. Yeah, Campbell, did you hear that last thought I was talking about? The non-insulated copper that's embedded inside the churches there, the cathedrals on the floor, going out, radiating, and then going up the walls. That was all non-insulated as well. So you start to look at that just as a base right there. It was infused into the rock, and a lot of that rock is exactly what you're talking about, quartzite rock.
Yeah, I'd never thought about that. So, yeah, that's a good thought. Like, what's all this insulation doing, right? Like, is it stopping it? Is it just the high voltage? You know, I think we're on the wrong voltage, right, as well. They want everything to be these sort of electrical stuff that we use that creates fields that are bad for us. So, yeah. And, of course, electriculture is the same pretty much, right? It's uninsulated, just like the strapping on the cathedrals, and it's just working without an input power source. So I think we're just, we're taught to look at technology one way, but clearly it can be done in many ways, right? There's other ways to do all this kind of stuff. But
do we know what the tubes in these in the cathedrals, what are they called? They're not piano organs. Do we know
organs.
what those the organ tubes were made out of? Were those copper?
I think a lot of them were. They definitely look to be copper. I haven't, studied any of them, because the only ones I've seen have still been up in the chapels. But I would say that, yeah, I mean, and that would just be for a resonance thing. But it's also just, the length of the pipes and everything, and the frequency they were giving out. Because, I mean, they're basically like horns, right? And we have all these stories of the horns of, Jericho. They blew the horns and the walls fell down. That was all frequency. The Tibetan monks still blow horns. There's horns everywhere, right? So it's definitely a frequency thing. But I don't know for sure, but I would say that they'd be copper.
Well, it's just interesting because we brought up bells earlier, and I think a lot of the bells were also made out of copper as well.
They were more, I think, a bronze mix, but yeah, they definitely had copper in them.
So there's something to the connectivity of the copper, and that's why I asked why the most conductive element or material that we knew of. But I mean, what if it wasn't gold though? What if? Because we don't really understand why gold is like so precious. Gold is just like a weird thing that people just like collect, and like it's somehow super ultra valuable. I mean, what else do we really do with gold besides hoard it and then turn it into something different and make rings and jewelry and stuff out of gold? And then that gets into the whole theory of the Zachariah Sitchin's work about the Anunnaki, which is up for debate, but it's been theorized over a long time about the Anunnaki coming to Earth to mine it for gold. Well, what would they be using that gold for? What would be the purpose of that gold? Would it not have been a different element that's more highly conductive, like copper, like silver? Or something like that, like I don't really understand the purpose for gold.
Sitchin says that the Anunnaki needed it to put into their atmosphere to stop the sun burning up their planet or something like this, or as they pass the sun, I think, in Nibiru. But we've got monoatomic gold as well, right? Which is very good for us if we ingest it. I mean, that could have been that. It could have been that, that was why it was so valuable. It's also good in circuitry and stuff. But there's definitely a lot of copper out there. And I mean, copper still works really well. It's probably easier to work with. But like I said, there's also a lot of gold. I mean, look at churches. Go and check out some cathedrals, man. Those things are covered in gold. Look at the Vatican, right? Like, it's gold everywhere. We think that it's because of wealth, but it might be because of something else.
That's interesting because we've mined a lot of the gold. We've taken a lot of the gold out of the ground. And,
Exactly.
and what has that done to our soil? Like, what has that done to the ability to grow things? And, like, it's definitely harmed it, I think, stripping all the gold out of the soil.
I agree. And out of the rivers, right, where it would turn into more monatomic type particles, and you could go and swim in it. And yeah, I agree.
Because I noticed a lot of copper piping when we were traveling too, staying in Airbnbs across Europe. They still had a lot of copper piping everywhere you look. Again, being antibacterial. And over here, everything's plastic in America. I had to change that work on the sink a little bit. It's all plastic pipes under there. And I was looking and just reminiscing about, damn, the copper. I'd love to get some copper pipes in the house just to change the structure of water coming from the main out or when we're getting from the spring in, both. So how would that, think about just even in the ingestion of simple metals to keep your body functioning in a different state or level. Just copper. Mm. Now, what about silver goblets? Or, I don't know many people that have gold goblets, because even if you were going to get, like you say, you need electricity to get something gold plated that you could drink on a regular, that you would get some sort of monatomic in there if you left water or some sort of beverage in your gold goblet. I'm wondering about silver also, silver goblets and a monatomic silver, if that would have any benefits for the health. Colloidal silver works.
Mm.
Not in high doses, though. Don't be taking that colloidal silver in super high doses, dude.
You'll turn blue.
Blue, dude. Straight up blue. No, it's interesting.
I was told that's why they were called, when I was young, I was told that's why they were called blue bloods, is because they use silverware, right? And they're always getting monatomic gold. I don't think that was real, but that's what I got told.
That's interesting. Yeah, what are they, what's the goblet or the thing that Jesus drank out of, supposedly? What do they call that? At the Last Supper? Holy Grail? A Holy Grail?
That's the one.
Yeah, what if that was like a gold or silver thing and only Jesus had it? That's why he was so smart.
They could live for eternity.
That's right.
Until they got him.
Ascended directly up into heaven.
Aside from the cross, being crucified up there, had that not happened, using that same goblet reference for the Last Supper, would that have extended life into hundreds of years? Or is that the sub-messaging behind that? I'm just curious.
Yeah. It could be. Maybe that was the water of life, or whatever they call that. What do they call that? The fountain of youth.
Yeah.
Maybe his chalice was the fountain of youth.
Could very well be.
33 forever.
And what about jewelry, right? Is this why people wear jewelry? Because I've got 2 copper bracelets I wear, and my wrist goes blue because it's all rubbing off, and so people wear silver, they wear gold, they wear copper. It's another way to get, metals into your body, right?
Not the plastics, though, dude. You don't want the plastics in there. You just want the metals, dude. Microplastics. Microplastics are super dangerous. I mean, it's like there was a study that was done that I talked about a long time ago on my show, that a lady did a study and said that on average in the United States, people ingest as much as a credit card worth of plastic a week.
Well, I mean, just think about car tires. All these cars driving around, and tires wear, right? Where do you think all that rubber and plastic goes? And that's a lot. So, yeah, but I mean, I believe that we're the power anyway. So, and they've been trying to knock us off for decades, right? Look at all the stuff they're putting in the food and the water, and they still don't seem to be succeeding. So, to me, if you focus on, because I think the bodies are self-healing machines, right? So even if we are full of plastic, I'm sure that, we have the systems to get rid of that as well. So I don't really sort of pay too much attention to things they tell me will kill me, and I'm still here. So
Campbell, they're trying to shorten and shrink our taint, bro. That is what they're doing. They want our taints smaller because that creates less masculinity in men. Okay, it's all judged off of the taint.
Oh, for sure.
You can measure the masculinity of a man by the length of his taint.
Yeah, man, estrogen, like it's in all soy products, and You know, when you eat them, you start dressing in rainbow flags, apparently. So, I mean, you all know what's going on. It's all, you know, they've been attacking us. But, I mean, I still think that, you know, it's like with you know, chemtrails. Like, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, my God, chemtrails, they're doing this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to see it as, you know, manna falling from heaven, right? Why not? Why not turn it around on them? If we can manifest stuff and transmute things, well, because to me, that's the biggest thing they've got is fear. Like, you know, sure, they've got weapons and all this other stuff, and they can start wars and crash economies, but unless you've got people in a state of fear, then none of the other stuff works. So if we believe all this stuff and that their, you know, perspective is the only one that's valid, then we're kind of stuffed, right? But if we flip all these things on its head and just like, well, you know, look at those lines in the sky, giving me vitamin B, making me stronger. You know, I think it's like with smoking. You know, we have in Australia, you have all these, you know, smoking will kill you on all the cigarette packets. And when they release those, within 6 months after releasing that on the cigarettes, deaths and illnesses from smoking went up like 50%, because people were looking at these things going, this is going to kill me. So I think what's much more important is what we believe rather than what they tell us. And it comes back to where the power, right? We can change all this stuff. We can believe it, or we can believe in ourselves even more.
Yeah, transmutation. I believe in that 100%. Like you can turn it into something positive. I think that was the whole idea of like prayer. Like praying before you eat wasn't necessarily meant to, you know, give thanks to a outside source or an outside God. It was meant to like bless the food and raise the vibration of the food, so it's healthier for you. That's what I think prayer, especially over dinner or supper or breakfast or whatever, was originally used for, but regardless if they knew that or not.
Exactly. And that's another reason not to eat at McDonald's, right? Is because no one's loving that food when they're cooking it, right? I mean, Hindus still pray over their water before they drink it. And so, and you know, Dr. Emoto, right? He kind of proved that this is all true. Intention will change the structure of water, and all food's got water in it.
Then we're mostly made out of water too, so we can change the structure of our body as well. Go ahead, Dave.
Exactly.
No, with the manifestation, I mean, Think and Grow Rich should be one of the first kindergarten books that anybody ever understands on manifesting reality, because they're doing exactly that. They're getting us currently through the news cycle and, you know, social media, et cetera, to manifest the world that they want us to manifest for them based on that fear response. The transmutation, this is the healthiest glass of water I have ever had to drink. The energy it will give me to retransplant my peach trees and my elderberry bushes after this interview. I'm going to be up until midnight with straight God energy to be able to manifest with those plants so they grow the strongest they've ever grown. Starting putting this into my Yamoto here, water glass also for this. You know, you can put the thought into it. And again, you know, when you're coming out and thinking about after retransplanting plants, that same thing, you know, this water is going to help your body retain its perfect pH balance so you can grow and produce the ripest fruits and the most sugar-laden content fruits ever, so it can nourish our bodies as well with micronutrients without the plastics. Like, you can take it as far as you want to go with that glass of water or with your manifestation, but they never teach you that in the schools. It's always about be ready to plug into a corporate position. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. I mean, how much stuff have we manifested in terms of dreams of whatever it is? Just when you focus on it, it just seems to appear out of somewhere, right? These opportunities present themselves when you're focused on some goal. So cheers to everybody's spiritual health, physical health, because you manifested it in your water and your glass and your food and your reality. Take the power back from these dark forces. That's what they're terrified of, is people like us talking about being able to manifest, but on the different direction of taking our planet back and kicking this dark force back for several thousand years so it does not remanifest on our planet. they're terrified of that. Because if enough of us get together and start manifesting and using our God-given innate abilities to change this world in a light vibration, they can't hold state. They can't manifest that fear base, because at that point you'll lose the fear when you step out off of the invisible ledge of where it takes us. That's why this social media machine is terrifying us with nuclear war and all this and that. They want you to be afraid, because what are you waiting for? You're waiting for the news to tell you what's coming next. Same like when, Ryder, when we did that thing, the news was telling everybody, oh, the eclipse is going to terrify everybody. It's going to kill everybody. The thing is going to die. And that was what everybody was waiting for. They were waiting up to those few seconds when the final disc went and what would happen. And they just drew you up to that line. And then off the gas, foot off the gas, and everybody, well, what did you do during that time manifesting in your mind of what could go wrong? Did I get it ready? They just drew us through the act one of the play right then. Right?
Yeah.
And not only that though, too, it's has to do with this community as well. This community does the exact same thing. I mean, the national broadcast system that everyone was saying that was going to turn everyone into freaking zombies, the national emergency broadcast system. Remember that, David? That was like a couple of months before the solar eclipse thing, that they were like, it's going to turn everyone into zombies and activate this thing within the DNA and everyone's going to rewalk. It's like these things, they just pop up like every once in a while. And then it's a regurgitation of something that happened not that long ago, but is surrounding some other different event. And we've seen several of those. I mean, shoot, in the past 4 years, we've probably seen, at least 50 of them, and it happens every couple of months. There's a new thing, but it's the same thing that's just slightly different, and it gets everybody talking about it. And then as soon as it's over, they don't mention it ever again, and then it's on to something different, and then that different thing is the same thing as the thing that happened before, just different, just slightly different, and then it just gets repeated, and then it just turns and snowballs into something different, but is the exact same type of fear-mongering nonsense.
Yeah, the Hegelian dialectic, but they get us to create the world that they want by feeding us all these stories, and we all focus on it, and we create it. When, like David says, we need to focus on creating what we want. And, a big thing is everyone was running around yelling fake news, the news is fake, 4 years ago, but now they don't seem to have realized that, social media is the news as well, right? And they're still latching on to these negative things and passing them around as fear, which is, that's the one thing that we shouldn't be doing. We should be focusing on what we want, the world we want to create, and that way we'll get there much faster. But all the energy that we give, we can only think so many thoughts a day, and every thought is energy. So we've only got so much energy to give out every day. If we're giving more to the fear and to the stories and to the system than we're giving to our futures, what do you think is going to win? This is the thing. Like I said it before, we've got the power to do all this, because everything's energy, right? Like this physical world is just a perception, but it's all energy. So we can change stuff. That's how we manifest stuff. That's how things just pop up in your life and your experience. So, the imagination is the key to that, is to focus on what you want, to see it, to feel it, and to not be distracted, because that's one of their biggest tools next to fear, is to distract us. Look over here, look over here, look over here. Just don't look where you want to be going, because if you do, you'll get there. And that's what they don't want.
You brought up something really interesting there, which is our imagination. And I definitely feel like there's been a concerted effort to get rid of our imagination. That's why we have this type of technology. As soon as a new child is born, basically as soon as they come out of the womb, it's an exaggeration, but they're basically given a tablet. They're basically giving some kind of technology, and that is degrading their imagination. Like, I don't feel like kids go outside and play with their imagination anymore. Even whenever I was a kid, we would always do that. We'd go out and play Star Wars, right, with sticks. We'd play Dragon Ball Z, and we would create these elaborate storylines and like pretend that we were these characters. And that's an imagination building. Like, that's a a manifestation right there. The same types of techniques that are used with manifestation is used in your imagination. And I feel like that has been siphoned away and taken away from this new generation of kids because of the technology.
For sure, that's what the education system's for. Come inside, kids, leave your imagination and your imaginary friend outside and come inside and I'll teach you to spell, you know?
I'm old school, I guess. We used to, when you got a refrigerator box from somebody who's got a new refrigerator in the neighborhood, that would keep you occupied for the whole day or afternoon. Like, I'm old school, I guess, where you can still remember climbing trees and getting enjoyment out of refrigerator boxes or something, you know? And if you don't understand that, you're too young to understand that, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, gosh, I was a child of the 80s. We didn't have the internet. We hardly had, you know, each house maybe had one TV, and that was only mum and dad got to choose the channels, and it wasn't an option. We were literally kicked out of the house. You know, on the weekends after breakfast, they'd kick you out and they don't come back until the street lights are on. And that's what you would just, you know, use your imagination. You would build forts. You would, you know, whatever. But yeah, now, you know, people are worried about, you know, they're going to turn us into cyborgs, but then they walk down the street with this thing in their hand that they're constantly looking at and getting information from and validation and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you know, I've got news for those people. They're already halfway there, right? They're being ruled by technology.
Yeah, I'm just going to say from my personal perspective of my own life, getting out since I have this small farm here and setting up the grow beds and planting everything. And currently we have ducks and geese in 3 different areas that we put fence up around. So we've noticed over this last year that the trees that were in there that we originally put the fruit trees are doing far better than the ones. So we're retransplanting our orchard inside the duck and the geese area to try to get the natural fertilizer and have them take care of the pests, walk around. So like creating the imagination to set up these 3 zones for the ducks and the geese, and then being able to populate that with fruit plants. So that's kind of my imagination for this last week or so, is to try to reimagine that orchard growing, but we had it in the wrong spot. We had it in a real nice area, lush soils. They were doing well. We got a huge amount of peaches this year. Got some cherries kicking off, a few plums as well. Apples are kicking as always. We're trying to move some of those ones that are not performing as well, the smallest of the trees, or over into this area where we hope that with all the boosted fertilizer and maintenance and care that birds can do to take care of pests and keep everything trimmed around the base of the trees and the trunks, will do far better for us. So that's my imagination, is trying to get out to produce some of my own food, because this microplastics thing is a big deal. I'm not using plastics when I drink. Generally, I'm not going to say never. I mean, occasionally it might, but I really go out of my way to keep more of, and again, if you're going to use manifestation and imagination, then make your diet and your lifestyle as clean as it can possibly be. Like, we get our meat from the Amish. We don't want vaccinated meat. We don't want thing that's gone through, you know, umpteen GMO grain. They grow their own corn out there that they feed to the cattle and the pig that then they sell. To try to go out of your way to create something outside this system, because that is another terrifying thing for these elite that have set up all these systems for you to plug you into, like a light bulb. Once you step outside that, you're a danger, because you've done it and you can prove to others that you can step outside to a great degree and produce what you want and trade with others. But in the minute that you start messaging that to millions of people is when, you know, a few strange things start to happen to you. That messaging is clear. Manifest it in any way, shape, or form you can. I just choosing it to do it with food and things that I put in my body, and the enjoyment of clean meats, clean foods, clean vegetable, clean fruit, and clean water from a spring. That's me, though. Other people might take it in a different form and fashion. Maybe you want to have animals. Maybe you, I don't know. But for me to get duck eggs every day and this sort of thing, that's a joy. You know, and I know where everything's coming from. But maybe that, you know, you say, well, I can't do that. I can't have that. Well, then that means that your priority, or the way that you're visualizing what could be or not be in the life, you've already cut yourself off at the wall. Well, I can't do that. The moment you stop and you say, I can't do it, or it's not possible, then of course it's not possible. It never will be, because you just stopped it. But the minute you open the possibilities of changing and moving into something more in tune with what your body or your mind or your spirit's looking for, those doors just continually open all the way down, the more focused you are on getting that done.
Yeah.
A long rant, but that's all I don't know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah. No, it's true. Like, and especially the judging thing, like, you know, if you judge something as that's impossible, then to me, what you're doing is you know, it's back to charge, right? You're putting that thought in charge of you, because if it's impossible, you can never find a solution. So it's in charge and you're stuffed. Just like saying, you know, this is the truth when you don't know it is. It's putting something in charge of you, and it stops your thinking process. Everything should just be interesting, right? You know, and that way you've always got solutions. You can always find, you know, new ways to do things. But all this, like, I can't do that, you know, because of the government, or I can't do that because of this. Well, the only person you're hurting is yourself, because there's people out there who are doing different things despite the government, despite the whatevers. You know, there's stuff we can all do.
The world's so dangerous, Campbell. I can't believe you're traveling out there. It's so scary. I can't travel. I can't go see anything. How scary is it? Oh, you're gonna get kidnapped and killed, and I'm gonna help for ransom. You're gonna die over there. How'd you go? You stay home. It's safe right here.
Yep. I went to America in October last year, and I heard that from so many people. And then I went, I had a ball, nothing happened, came back home. And then when I was leaving again this year, same thing. And the worst thing about that is all these people saying that are the ones who are yelling, they were trying to lock us down. How dare they try and lock us down? And they don't realize that they're now locking themselves down because they're scared of things they don't know. I've traveled through Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia. These are countries that people were freaking out. I mean, you know, there was war there and it's close to the Ukraine and all this. Man, I've had the time of my life. Like, best people, really good food, amazing, you know, country and landscapes, and people are hiding in their houses too scared because of something that they've, you know, imagined will be real. And this is the thing. Everyone manifests. We're all manifesting constantly. It's just that most people are manifesting stuff they don't want.
Well, that's how this whole control system and structure really works, Campbell, is that in order to get some people or someone or a mass amount of people to do something that they don't necessarily want to do, you have to convince them that it's their idea. Then it becomes a self-policing system. That's the way that it works, and that's the way that it's really always worked. That's how you get anybody to do something that they don't want to do, is you make them believe that it's their idea to do it, because you can't force people to do it. I mean, there are occasions where you can force people, but not so much in the United States. The way that the United States works is it's psychological. But David, you just brought up something really interesting with the animals, because I just read an article the other day that said that roughly around 65% of the antibiotics that are currently sold in the U.S. are sold to animal and food production. So cattle and swine, and roughly around 44, like animals get 44% more of these antibiotics and other drugs than humans do in the US, which is wild. We're giving more antibiotics to animals than we're giving to humans.
Are humans eating those animals?
Yes. It's you're uptaking that in the food chain. And again, you need to add that double layer of then they're fed genetically modified crops that are sprayed with glyphosate in that whole process of their feed. So it's not just what's been injected into the animal, but it's what they're ingesting as their food source. That's also from a contaminated food source on that whole mega farm type of thing. And I'll tell you one thing, my buddy, he's got like 500 acres over here, and he's got a pest problem with rabbits this year, like hundreds. So we went over there hunting, and we got about 20 rabbits in the last day and a half or so. And, you know, they're always telling you, oh, this thing, the liver, it's got splotches on the liver. You can't eat the rabbit. It's poison. There's this content. They're saying the same thing with the deer. Oh, you don't touch a deer. There's all contaminated in the wild forest out there. So we, you know, gutted those 20 rabbits because he likes to eat rabbit and his family does too. So they just, and it was a learning curve for me too on how to skin these rabbits. But anyway, the one very thing that I was focused on, and he was too, was focusing on the liver to look for these spots. Because apparently if a rabbit's contaminated, it has this like wild disease, and the name escapes me of what it was. If you touch that rabbit with your bare hands or you touch the liver, you're going to get infected too and turn into a zombie of sorts and get brain rot and this kind of stuff. So we were looking at the livers of all these rabbits, and the livers are real small, and to make sure that there was no blotches. 0 out of 20. And I'm like, if they're painting it to be as commonplace as it is, with all the rabbits are infected, all the deers are infected, don't use that as a wild food source. Don't do it. You're going to get some sort of zombie brain-eating disease. We should have seen at least one rabbit with it. 0. So I'm calling BS on that too. They're trying to frighten you away from any natural types of food sources.
Yeah, did you see where they just reintroduced the wolves back into Colorado?
Hmm.
They just put wolves back in Colorado. Wild wolves.
Not good for the livestock. I bet a few farmers will be shooting at those things.
For sure. And not good for the people either. You know how dangerous a wolf is? Wait until one person gets killed by a wolf or a kid gets killed by a wolf. And Colorado's a very like nature-y type of state. Like people go out there and hike and walk and ride bikes on trails like all over the place, right? Wait until a wolf gets a hold of one of these people. And it becomes a different story. Yeah, there's bears too.
Oh, hell yeah. You need to go armed when you walk out. You just don't go walking out there for a fun day at the you definitely need to carry something with you. You know, it's harder to do on a bike. Like you're cruising on a bike and you got your sidearm with you and cruising, and like things just comes out of nowhere and hits you. It's a little bit different than walking down where you can sort of get the sense, like I feel like I'm being hunted or something, and you get that vibe in the forest, and you're just looking around like, what's going on?
Yeah, I wouldn't go hiking. I'll put myself up against the snakes and spiders and crocodiles, I think, rather than a bear. Those things are scary.
You all can't carry down there, can you?
No, man. No, we got done. We got psyoped back in the 90s.
Okay, hold on. Let me pull up this. Okay, so this is the wildlife and Colorado Parks and Wildlife. The Parks and Wildlife Commission passed the final Colorado Wolf Restoration and Management Plan on May 3rd, 2023. Between December 18th and 2022 of 2023, Colorado Parks and Wildlife experts released 10 gray wolves on the public land and Summit and Grand counties. And I think more has been released since. They just released a bunch of them like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Again, this is an old article, but I don't know what they're thinking. That's a dangerous animal. And there was a reason that they weren't in Colorado. Because they were killing things. They were eliminating other animals that people needed. Now they're bringing them back.
Yeah, coyotes are prolific breeders as well. So, over here, the Cherokee would always, they term the coyote as the trickster. Because if you had a family or a troop coming through with you, a clan for a better term, if you were to shoot them and shoot a few of the males or just eliminate, a percentage of that population, something else is going to move in and fill that vacant space. And generally it'll be a mother that can then rear up like a bunch of different pups. So the reason they call it the trickster is you kill off 2 or 3 or 4 coyotes and then suddenly 20 of them pop up on your property. Because that vacant space is made, a family of coyotes will move back in, and usually it'll be, depending on what time of the year, pregnant females, plural, that'll pop in, and suddenly you got like 16 pups pop out. And wait, we only had 4 coyotes before, and now you got 20 running around. That's why they called it the trickster. Because the more you try to remove, the more empty space is created for other families of coyotes to then move in and then breed and then have more coyotes. So There's a fine line between trying to remove it. You need to remove 100% of them, or something's going to fill in that vacuum of space. And you look about the predator class on this planet as well. We've left empty space for them to exist in. So they certainly came in and inhabited it. And now they're proliferating, and they have to that point. Now it's time to take our planet back.
Man, can you imagine all the other problems, and now people got to worry about wolves? Like, bro, that's like just another thing. You can just be walking along, and all of a sudden a giant wolf is there, and you got a problem. Wild, dude. I couldn't imagine what it would have been like back when there were just random wild animals anywhere that could come out and kill you at any time.
That's why nobody ever traveled alone. You always traveled with people. There was no solo hikers 400 years ago, because for sure you would disappear. Not that there'd be some axe murderer out there, some psycho, but guaranteed something bigger than you hunting in a pack would come and nibble you up. When it got dark, nobody was cruising through the forest, having campfires in the dark, chilling, partying out. You were on full guard, campfire roaring through the night to keep the predators away. It was a very different world. And you go further back in time with less people, I'm sure it was even weirder with larger animals further back. You imagine 1,500, 2,000 years ago, comparatively to 400 years ago.
Wild. Really wild. Literally and figuratively. All right, gentlemen, I think it's been an amazing conversation. Thanks
Campbell,
for
11
coming on
o'clock
here.
over there. You're 6 hours ahead of us over there.
Yep. 11 p.m. Yep.
Right
It
on.
is.
Getting late for Campbell. Thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate your time. And thanks, everyone in the chat. If you guys have anything else that you would like to bring up, if not, I think this is a good spot to close it out. Appreciate you guys a lot. Dave, can you let people know where to find you online?
The Adapt 2030 channel, while it exists, I'm over on Brighteon, BitChute, and Rumble for the same Adapt 2030 channel, and the podcast, really pushing that, the Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast. We're rebranding that. We're in the process of rebranding that. I'll announce the new name for it in a little bit. But for right now, please jump over there. Anywhere podcasts are hosted across the net, that's Mini Ice Age Conversations.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Always amazing having you on. And
Good to chat with you too.
And Campbell, brother, let us know where we can find you online.
Yeah. Just Autodidactic. Put that into YouTube or Rumble or, Instagram. I'll do a bit there. And you'll find me. And hello to everyone in chat. Hibby Shake. Thanks everyone for being here. And good to talk to you, David. First time.
As well.
Yeah, this has been an amazing conversation. And of course, let us know what you guys think in the comments of this video. We covered a lot here today, but I just want to thank all of you guys. Marissa, Dragonfly, Off the Hook, Val, Nina, Noble Truth, and anybody else that was Anne, Trina Phoenix, good to see you. And anybody else that I may have missed. I appreciate each and every one of you for contributing to the conversation. Let us know what you think of any of the stuff that we mentioned today. Nikola Tesla, Bosnian pyramids, star forts, any of that, because I'm always interested to hear what you guys think about it as well in the comments. And please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel in the algorithm, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications, and the links to both David DuByne and Campbell from Autodidactics is in the description of this video. So we go over there, show them some support, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for being here, everyone. Appreciate you. Gentlemen, stay with me.